Welcome, Andrew. How are you?
Wow. Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. As we were talking amidst the 42 different challenges around the country and the world that we're facing right now, but
hmm
uh, but opportunities, you know, come from these type of situations, right?
Yes, or we should all keep telling ourselves that so we keep working on doing the right stuff.
We
Either
can go,
one.
we
Either.
can go with that one also. At least do something is what we're trying to say.
Uh-huh.
So,
Uh-huh.
hey, how about if you could semi-formally introduce yourself, give us a tiny bit of your background, and then we'll chat.
Sure, sure. So Andrew Rodriguez, and I'm the CEO and Chief Investment Officer of a company on Wall Street called Change Finance. And so we're an asset manager like a BlackRock, but we care really deeply about people and planet. We say we invest in service to life. So pushing far and beyond what folks are doing these days around sustainability on fossil fuels, carbon footprint, sex trafficking, you name it. Everything that has to do with environmental and social justice that we can fit into how we invest. That's what we aim to do. And I came by the most direct route to get here. I was a pastor before I got in on Wall Street. And it was actually in a transition. I'm currently sitting in Portland, Oregon. I don't live here anymore. But while I was living here, I went from this pastor to Wall Street. In fact, working on sustainability and working on eco districts. This idea that in a 20-minute walkable route, you could have all of your needs met, including safety and security and food and all the rest. And that just got me so excited to get working. All of a sudden I realized, I might need to switch into something different than pastoring if I was going to solve gentrification or work on some of the issues I was seeing and really caring about. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me. Yeah, and how I got here.
Well, you could have been a good pastor too, but
I had mixed results at the time. Yeah, mixed results.
well, no, we really appreciate you participating in our Leaders Who Care series. I didn't know that, so that was something new that I learned right there. So along those lines, we all talk about having our why. What is that, etc. And I do want to know that, but I want to ask you more specifically, why do you do what you do?
Mm-hmm. Man, at the end of the day, I need to be working on something that is going to save this place. And in fact, I might need to be working on something that will save this place. And from day to day, that's what I spend my time thinking about, is how I can make the thing I work on save this place. So I feel just a tremendous amount of responsibility to the world we have right now. I don't think I'm one of those people who's born and says it's unfair. I'm one that just sees what's right in front of me and goes for it. So, as an example, somebody I've been lucky to get to start this company with is a woman named Hunter Lovins, who Time Magazine named her a hero of the planet. And she'll wear her cowboy hat into the UN to talk to them about climate change. Fantastically intelligent, scary, powerful woman. And one time she told me that with climate change, at the end of the day, we're all soldiers. And so we don't get to cry. We don't get to, run away take our ball and go home when things get hard. It's just about get right back to work. And I gotta say, I think I'm that guy who's really drawn into that sort of message. And so finance at the end of the day, upstream from everything I care about. So if there's a way with finance that I can move capital towards the things that make a difference in this world, then that's where I need to be. And so, finance specifically, because it seems like the most powerful human system we've ever created to make change if we use it for it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I mentioned to you, I was just speaking to a lady from the Middle East and talking about, we need more human development, and we need, one thing we're working on, we need to have economic interdependence to really make stuff happen. And kind of goes along with this segue. It's taken decades for leaders to realize that, being engaged in social and environmental impact is actually good for business. Not to mention it's good for attracting the top talent. So your education started out philosophy, business, but you have a clear line of experience in social and environmental impact investment. And now you got your own firm. And it sounds like Hunter's a great person to be involved with, from what you just said there. I want to know, how did you know that caring about people's interest in making an impact like that, and a good ROI on that, would also be your answer to what you want to do? How'd you know that?
You know, at the time, I'll say I didn't know that everybody would come along with me. This was not necessarily my sense, but it is a fun story about how I got to this being the thing I needed to work on. I don't know if you're familiar with the TV show 30 Rock. Comedy show, main character Liz Lemon in one of these episodes realizes she's wealthy, or that she has more money than she realizes she has. And she gets super excited, and she goes to her boss, who runs, I think, NBC Studios or something. And she says, Jack, teach me that thing rich people do where they turn money into more money. And I was like, oh my God, she just described the whole of investing, like in a nutshell. At the end of the day, finance is turning money into more money for people who already have it. And that felt wrong to me. I lived in Portland, Oregon, right? So my sense of justice around economics and what was going on was certainly quite heightened. But I got this sense that in this lifetime, that system wasn't coming apart. I might have been really wrong about that, but I didn't think in my lifetime it would have been falling apart. And so I decided to have more fun with it. And I said, all right, if turning money into more money actually also creates momentum, right? It creates momentum for anything. Then could I kind of Robin Hood it? Could I turn money into more money for some people, but make momentum happen and healing and things that matter for people and planet? Can I work at a place where it matters and get more of the good stuff happening and less of the bad? And so ended up switching careers, figuring out, what do I need to do? What does somebody need to do to get on Wall Street? They need to go get their MBA. Okay, I'm going to start here. And so it was a little bit of that to get started. And so right now, I'm so glad to see how many people are showing up and excited to invest this way. It's become the norm now. More than half of us are already doing this sort of investing. And the interest among millennials is 95%, and the interest among the general population, for what it's worth, is 85%. So everybody is on board. So honestly, it just makes the job easier, because at the end of the day, the job was, how do we make sure that 100% of life can thrive on this planet before it's too late? How do we figure that out? And if we can use finance for prosperity in that sort of way, that kind of prosperity that 100% of life thrives, then great. And if everybody's on board, it's going to be possible. It's going to be possible, not just in our lifetimes, but I mean, we could do this in a decade if we wanted to.
Well, when we don't even need everybody, it'd be nice to have everybody, but if we just got even 90%, that would be pretty good too.
Amen.
Hey, you might talking about this. I always think back to my grandparents, who were big influencers in my life, and they would always say, not as a slogan, but because of how they lived, they really believe this, with the key of action. As long as you have your health, that's the most important thing, they would say. And we talked about this before. We got COVID going on. We got economic issues going on. We got the inevitable tipping point for racial justice, social justice going on. We got wildfires now going on. We got stuff going on. But in a way, it's also people had a little bit of a time for, if you want to call it, an awakening. To think of like what's really important, and talk about what you think based on what you just said about if we get everybody towards that. Is there an awakening or different awareness you think is happening? People at work, people at home, people in their community, all of the above. How do you see all that?
That is a great question, and lots of smarter folks than I have had lots of smarter thoughts on this subject. But one of the things that just seems to me to be true about COVID, and then the cascading, I swear to God, you need to ask your friends every single week, how are you this week, with how fast things are changing. But 2020 just seems this year where all vulnerabilities we might have as a people are going to be revealed to us. And we're all sitting still with not a lot of control to do something about it, having to watch all these things and wonder how we can create agency. And I actually have so much hope watching how many people aren't willing to sit by any longer when they see these sorts of elements. So if there's anything, I see two sides of a coin happening, and I think I'm going to end up on the second side, but I think both are important. I think one side of it is to say we cannot compromise in ways that make us vulnerable. You're talking about health, the economy. I honestly, along with racism and wildfires and climate change, there's also, it feels like our institutions are having this same question about vulnerability right now. And so I hear a certain set of folks talking about we can't cut corners anymore when it leads to vulnerability for ourselves or others. And in a way that's really exciting to hear, because cutting corners so many times led us to results we then didn't intend around the climate specifically. So there's that one side of it. The other side that we've been doing a lot of in our own company, but I've been seeing it more globally speaking, is that, and my example will be this, people are missing meetings at a rate that they've never missed. And it's not just that they have Zoom fatigue, they are forgetting that they have a meeting because this life is too crazy and too scary, and their kids are right next to them and they're just, like they're getting distracted. I had that happen. I missed a meeting where I got distracted by my son and I walked out the door 5 minutes before an important meeting started and like pushed him on a swing for an hour. And honestly, that was very important. I'm so glad I did it. But at the end of the day, it was all of us are in this place of the stress of feeling this lack of vulnerability or this lack of, or this vulnerability rather. There's a need for all of us to reframe what grace looks like and what perfectionism looks like and what enough looks like for ourselves and what it looks like for ourselves in work. Because I think personally, hey, every startup person overworks themselves, not a surprise to hear, but how many of us have made ourselves vulnerable in our relationships at home, in our health, in our spirituality, because we cut corners at work to get one more thing done and be 1 inch more perfect.
Yeah, I think you're right on. Someone coined it the other day saying, especially for younger people, but we've kind of trained people, at least here in the States, that if you're not monetizing every minute, something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than pushing your kid in a swing is pretty good return on investment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
yep. Back from my pastoral days, probably the most exciting book I read, very on Wall Street to say, but the most exciting book I read when I was in seminary was Following Christ in a Consumer Society. And it was talking about Jesus and Marx and what they shared in common about humanity and the fact that we should not commodify one another. And I found that as a really interesting frame. It didn't send me into full-blown communism, but it did get me to start a company like this on Wall Street for sure.
Yeah, I won't go too much into this time-wise, but there's a new docu-movie out called Social Dilemma. I don't know if you've seen it. It interviews a lot of top executives that used to be with a lot of the tech companies. And one of the key quotes in there is, first of all, they talk about we are the product now. And it talks about there's only 2 industries in the world that uses the phrase users. One of them is the social media, and one of them is the drug industry.
Somebody sent me that a link to a piece about that documentary and said I should watch it. And they sent it on the same day as I found out about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So I haven't watched it yet, but one of these days, really soon, I want to pick that up. I have a sense, at least personally, that one of the ways that I've made myself vulnerable was allowing so much of my attention to be captured by my phone and my social media accounts.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of that in there about notifications and how we're controlled. It's really cool. So how do you see the role of business leaders who care playing with respect to, 3 things that people want, or, if you will, they want their well-being. They want the financial, the physical, and the mental well-being. I know that sounds simple, but that's what they want. So how do you see the business leaders' role in playing that how they're going to give that to talent, or how they realize that that's actually good for business, and guess what, as a result, it's good for community too? What's your thoughts on that?
One thing to point out being on Wall Street is that the results seem to be in here. I can't make any sort of determinative statements, but if folks go and take a look over the last decade at, this sort of investing that's been done, it's done quite well. So all the conversations of how much would you underperform by doing the right thing, it hasn't seemed to be much, if any. And in fact, it has seemed to be on the opposite side and actually led to better results. I am of the opinion that a lot of the things that a lot of the corners we cut only served one stakeholder, and it served the investor or the owner. In fact, there's many different stakeholders. One framework that I like calls it into 5. So you have your customers are a stakeholder. And in fact, how many products do we know people don't care about? The company doesn't care about how it affects the customer as much as they care about how much money it might make the investor. But then you also have your employees, you have the community around you, and you have the environment. I mean, you have all of these stakeholders. And so reframing to say all of these stakeholders need to share value well together leads to better results, and actually leads to the kind of results that all of us businesses say we really want, which is that we want to be around in 100 years and be thriving. Great example or something that I like seeing is not Goldman Sachs, General Mills. General Mills bought Annie's. Everybody freaked out, all of the hippie moms, one of which I'm married to, of like, what are we going to feed our kids? Like, they're just going to turn this into a General Mills company. General Mills came out and they said, we've been here 100 years. We would like to be here for another 100 years. And they know something about the future of their customer base that we don't know. So we actually bought them to turn General Mills into an Annie's company. Those sorts of pieces, I think, are where we need to be. We've spent the last 20 plus years really, really well compensating CEOs for being visionary on stock price. And now I think we need to figure out, how do we get CEOs to be visionary on win-win scenarios for all stakeholders? Because when you get a win-win for your customers and the environment and your shareholders all at once, everybody's going to come back with more money to buy more of what you had again. And so it actually, when 100% of life thrives and is prosperous, 100% of life has a lot more money to spend on all the right things. So good for business to do the right thing for people. That's my belief at the end of the day. Ooh, one other thought. You can cut this one out if you need to cut one out. Is going back to our tech conversation. One of the things that I think a lot of business leaders who are wondering where they fit in this should be considering is it's literally just the risk of the information we all have at our fingertips. Doing the right thing pays because people see it, they hear about it in stories. You get caught doing the right things these days, and you get caught doing the wrong things. And we call it social license risk. There's some level to which, Walmart's never gotten their social license back. McDonald's has never really gotten their social license back. Facebook is losing their social license so fast, there's questions about where they'll be in 5 years. And so those sorts of risks from being poor, they don't pay. It doesn't seem, in a world where we have this level of access to information. So would want to put that in there too.
No, that's brilliant, and it's what we call omni-wins, actually. And in fact, they are taking better care of the shareholders by taking care of all the stakeholders, and it will be, as General Mills has talked about too. It's a great example. It goes beyond sustainability now; it goes to regenerating now, which doesn't, that's not deleting sustainable. It's just beyond sustainable, and we've given enough hits across the face by Mother Nature to realize that it's time, right? In fact, Jack Ma said it, not to go too much, when they went public, they said, we had it all wrong. You start with your employees first, and then it goes through up to your shareholders.
Fascinating. It always blows my mind that they say it after they made it.
Yeah, that's easier at that point. There's a true point. It's easier at.
No, not to end on a bad
Hey,
note. Those guys are. I am glad that when you get to some of these biggest seats of power, I am impressed every time one of them. They don't all make the same choice, but I'm glad that to see each one of them that say, I'm going to do more of the right things now that I'm in power. That's a choice they don't have to make, and we should all be honest about that as a gift. And
Yeah, well, better late than never. And
Mhm.
this is about leaders who care, but it's also about leaders who really want to care but don't necessarily know how,
Mhm.
and we'll help them.
Yes, we will.
Together. So, hey, thanks so much for participating. That was like fantastic, and we'll do it again
Really
soon.
enjoyed it, Mark. Thanks so much.